Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, where today we are doing a review of The Bride Test by Helen Hoang. This is the sequel to The Kiss Quotient. So, like The Kiss Quotient, this is a romance, and it is a romance between a neurotypical character and an autistic character. So let's jump right in with the description. So Kai is our autistic character. He has Asperger's, and as a teenager, he has decided that he is fully incapable of love. He is not able to love anybody else. And as such, he has never pursued any romantic relationships. Fast forward to him being an adult, and his mom has decided he is done with this. she is done with this. She thinks that he is capable of love, and furthermore, she's going to prove it. So she goes to Vietnam and hires a woman, our female lead, Esme, to basically come back, live with Kai for the summer, and try to make him fall in love with her. And if she succeeds, then they can get married at the end of summer. And if not, his mom will send Esme back to Vietnam with 20 grand because at least she tried. So that is the setup, and it kind of goes from there. It is a romance. We do know that there is going to be a happily ever after here. But yeah, so let's jump in and talk about the characters. So Kai is realistic. He is very realistically an autistic character. Of course, I would kind of expect that because Helen Hoang does have Asperger's herself, so she has very good insight into what it means to be autistic. So he felt very realistic. However, I did not really like Kai, and the reason is because I didn't really feel like he was fully fleshed out as a character. Like, I knew some of his stuff from how he interacted with people, but I didn't really feel like I ever knew him. Like, I knew his backstory and I knew some of his stuff going on with the autism, but I didn't really feel like I knew him as a person, if that makes sense. And so I just kind of was left wanting a little bit more. But I still did like him. I thought he was a likable character. Esme, on the other hand, was awesome. And I really liked Esme as a character. She is Vietnamese, coming to America for the very first time to try to seduce this Vietnamese American dude. And she doesn't understand autism because that's just not really something that's recognized in Vietnamese culture. So she has no idea what that means. She has no idea about American culture. She's so naive when she gets here. But she's so hardworking and determined to try to do the best thing for her family, as well as, like, for herself. She wants to be a good person. And I just love her journey as well. And I like her as a character. Even as I was like, it hurt a little bit to watch her as her ignorance of the culture that she has found herself in, leads her to do things that, like, people aren't gonna, she's trying to be helpful and she does things that people aren't gonna like. You know what I mean? And I get why she did it. But it was like, oh no, this is not gonna turn out how you think it is. And so, but that's very realistic too. And overall, I really just liked Esme. As far as, like, side characters, we really don't see that many. They're predominantly Kai's family. To some extent his immediate family, and then also his extended family. His extended family I kind of hated because they really didn't understand they didn't understand Kai. They don't understand autism, so they don't understand Kai. And so unfortunately, we see this a couple different times where Kai says something that is unintentionally cruel, and his immediate or his extended family kind of slaps back at him. Again, not really like in an overtly mean way, but just kind of a what's wrong with you, which is always taken poorly. Like, if you ever say what's wrong with you to somebody, they're always going to take it poorly. But Kai takes it even worse than most because he basically has decided that he is not a normal human being. He is an alien. So it's just kind of that interplay is very realistic but very hard. And I don't like his extended family because they could research autism and understand more. It doesn't mean it heals the hurt, but it makes it more understandable and it makes it easier to forgive. And so, but then his immediate family, like, I don't like his mom. I think she's interfering. Like, obviously, the plot setup is because is she just tramples all over his boundaries, and I'm just like, I do not love you, woman. Like, I think that your heart is in the right place. Like, I think your intentions are good, but how you go about things is so bad that, like, I can't think of you as a good person. So I didn't love that. His brother was okay, and that was the most I could say. Those are all the characters. So the characters are not my most favorite I have ever read, other than Esme. Esme really carries this. So I appreciate that she was good enough to carry it. And like I said, I didn't like them, but it was okay. I didn't need to like them. And more importantly, they were realistic. So there's that. So let's talk about that plot for a moment. The setup, I hate this setup because, like I said, Kai's mom just completely tramples all over his boundaries. This would be a problem even if you were neurotypical, right? For your mom to go to a different country and pay a woman to try to seduce you. And oh, by the way, she has to live in your house. That is a huge imposition, even for like a, a neurotypical person. But for an autistic person, this is like a recipe, potentially a recipe for disaster. Autistic people as a whole do not generally deal well with change, and surprise change is even worse. And living with somebody is a big change. Now, I think that Kai handled it very, very well. I just kind of really hated his mom for putting him in this position. So I did not love the setup. But once we got beyond the setup, I liked it. I thought the romance was very sweet. I really liked that there were particular moments included. So Esme has no understanding of autism. So she really doesn't have any stigmas attached to autism. And once she kind of realizes that Kai is not a normal person, she kind of throws her assumptions out the window and just gets to know Kai as an individual. And it's very, very nice to see that because unfortunately, a lot of autistic people end up in a situation where there are assumptions made about them when people assume that they're neurotypical and get mad when you don't meet those assumptions. And then when it's like, oh no, hey, don't judge, I am autistic, then there's a lot of assumptions made about that person based off of the autism. It's like a no-win situation in many cases. So it was really nice to see this character of Esme just be like, he is not what I expected, and I need to get to know him as an individual. It was very nice. I also really liked that it was included that Kai is able to learn how to be better at social stuff. He just needs somebody to teach him, and he needs to be at a point where he's willing to accept those teachings. And I really think that that was very nice to include. Additionally, I loved watching Esme as she grew and learned. She really had her own storyline where she got to figure out how to be an independent person. Like she decides in the middle, like, even if Kai doesn't love me, I want to stay in America, so how can I make this happen? And I love watching her grow and change and just be that hardworking individual who has to learn more about the culture that she is currently in so that she can do the best that she can to be able to stay here. And so I loved that. The last thing about the plot is something that I didn't like, and that is that Kai has said multiple times to his family, I am incapable of love, and nobody ever challenged him on it. They think they did because they said, you're incorrect, or that's wrong, or I don't know why you think that, but they never actually stop and say, why do you think that? And I think if they had really kind of asked why and really tried to figure out the evidence that Kai has that he's incapable of love, a lot of his issues would go away. It would have gone away much sooner. And eventually they do kind of challenge it, but in like more of a tangential way than actually straight on, why do you think that? And so I didn't love, again, it's very realistic. This is actually a very realistic portrayal of interactions between an autistic person and their neurotypical family. But I didn't love it. So but it was more because it made me sad that that's very realistic rather than like I thought it was unrealistic or I just hated it or anything like that. And then lastly, let's talk about the pacing and the writing itself. The pacing is great. It's very nicely set up. The writing itself is good. It's not flowery or anything, but it draws you in. It's very easy to read. Just to give you a good an idea, I sat down in the morning to start reading this and I did not get up until I was done. So, it flowed really nicely and it drew me in and it did not let me go until I was at the end. So honestly, even all these things that I'm saying I didn't like, obviously it wasn't enough to overcome all the things that I did like. And then lastly, the only thing I wanted to talk about for a con is one thing that did interfere with my ability to read and enjoy the beginning is we do switch perspectives between Esme and Kai, and we get into Kai's head, and Kai has clearly never had to deal with anybody who incited lust in him in the way that Esme does, and so he thinks a lot of very sexual thoughts that feel very crude, very crass, because he doesn't use euphemisms, right? He uses proper names for things. He just is very straightforward in his head. And it feels uncomfortable. Like, at least I found it to be a bit uncomfortable, and it did hinder my enjoyment of reading. However, it does go away eventually, like about halfway through the book. It does more or less stop on the steamy to sweet romance side of things, even though there is that he thinks about sex and like there is sex in this book. I do think that it is more on the sweet side of things. I mean, it's in the middle. It's not really raunchy, but it's not like very puritanical either. So, but I thought it was nice, and on the sweeter side of the things that I read. So, there you go. But that's it, you guys. So I know that I mentioned a lot of things that I didn't like, and it's more like it. It was because this autism was portrayed so accurate, like so well, and the interactions between Kai as an autistic person and his neurotypical family and romance interest were so real that it was a little hard to read. But it didn't really hinder my enjoyment. Overall, I thought this was a very lovely romance, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. So I highly recommend it, especially if you read and enjoyed the Kiss Quotient. But that's it, you guys. Let me know down below. Have you read The Bride Test? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know your thoughts, and because I would love to hear them. But that is it, you guys. So until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.